Hi everyone and welcome to my September reading wrap up. I'm really looking forward to getting to a few of these books because I read some pretty good ones this month. I also unfortunately DNF'd a couple which I wasn't anticipating to, but happened. So grab a drink. I have my tea. This is, I think, the Twinings Peace Tea. I haven't actually tried it yet, so let's see if I even like it. Very cinnamony, so I feel like it fits this month. So I also really want to get around to doing some book journaling, so I thought it would be fun to add at the end of this video. So if you enjoy that, stick around to the end. And without further ado, let's get into the books that I read. Starting with the first one that I finished, which I think I actually started in August but finished in September, was Broken Fae. This is book number 4 in the Ruthless Boys series. I feel like I mentioned this series every video thus far. I think it's my sign to wrap up the series and get it finished because I keep yapping on about it, and all I ever say is I can't say much because it'll be a spoiler because we're already in book 4. Oh boy, I don't even know where to begin with this series because honestly it's such a put it on in the background and so much happens type of book because I listen to it on audio. Same as with the Zodiac Academy series. So I have been loving the overlapping of characters. Like some characters, you by no means need to read Zodiac Academy to understand what happens in Ruthless Boys, but there are fun character cameos that do happen, and I believe slightly help understand something that happens when we get back into the Zodiac Academy series. Book 4, we are still trying to solve the murder of our main character's brother. We have always followed a cast of 5 characters, so we have Elise and then 4 other characters that we get perspectives from, so there's a lot going on basically, and it's set in the world of Solaria, so there's vampires and werewolves and fae and mythical creatures, and honestly anything that your mind can think of is probably in this book, and I'm quite enjoying it. I forgot to set up my little teddy bear. I don't know where to put you though because I don't want you to catch fire. Okay. Oh, that's blocking the light. Good enough. Okay. Honestly, ready to get this series done. There's one more book left in the series and I'm looking forward to finishing it. I think I gave this book 3 stars. Overall, I think it's a 4-star series. Obviously, I'm in book 4, so I've enjoyed it up until now. But it's just a lot of story to get through. There's so many characters now and you learn so much about the characters that there's certain people that I don't really care as much about. So at first, I really liked Leon as a character. But now, because something happens between him and the main girl that like changes their fates, so to say, I'm not enjoying it as much. I don't know why, because honestly it should make me want to enjoy it, but I'm slightly upset that the book went with that turn, and so I'm not enjoying it as much as I would have liked to, at least his perspective in the books, but everybody else's is fine. I do like the fact that each character has a different dynamic with the main character. With a cast of 4 other characters on top of your main character, it's a bit like, how can we make sure that everybody is unique enough to get people to care about them? And I think that the Twisted Sisters do a good job of differentiating each person. And the underlying who murdered my brother plot is, I didn't think was going to span the whole 5 books, but it is. And it's not bad by any means, but it's very slow because so many things happen to the main character that delays this. At the same time, we get snippets of, I don't remember his name, the brother. We get certain times we get POV chapters from him leading up to his murder. There's so much going on, to be honest. 3 stars to Broken Fae. Looking forward to wrapping the series up and getting back into the world of Zodiac Academy because I know people don't like the Ruthless Boys as much as Zodiac Academy, but honestly I've read more Ruthless Boys now than I have Zodiac Academy, that I feel more, not that I feel connected to these characters anyway, because I would not get myself in any of these situations. I find this story more compelling than the Zodiac Academy one so far. Next, I picked up another audiobook. This one is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. So I mistakenly dipped my toe into the waters of the Shadowhunter world at the beginning of the month, and I only slightly regret it because I'm in the middle of so many series and I want to give this like my all, you know? But now that I've listened to this one and a few more since, I don't mind as much that I've picked it up now because it is a good series. It is intriguing, the characters are unique, the magic in the world is unique, and the plot is decent. But I'm just itching to get to, what is it? Is it the, I don't remember which series, like the Clockwork Prince and Princess and Angel trilogy, which I know everybody loves. I'm sure if I read this series as a kid, I would have loved it just as much as I loved all of the books that I read as a child. Listening to it now, I can definitely tell A, that it was written in 2010, and B, that it's not as gripping of a story as I thought it would be. Also, why? No, we're gonna get to that point later. There's one plot point that I'm just like, can we not? But we'll get to that later because it is still very prominent then, and that is the most annoying thing in this entire book. City of Bones follows Clary, who grew up in New York. The beginning of the book, we basically see her mum disappear, and we're like, oh, where did she disappear? And Clary starts seeing things and magic and weird runes and people who she's like, surely you don't exist. And she realizes that her mother has been hiding her away from a world that she should have grown up in, but her mother chose to raise her differently. She meets the Shadowhunter crew, consists of Jace, Alec, and I don't remember her name. These Shadowhunters basically fight demons in this world. There are also werewolves and vampires in this world, and we basically follow the shenanigans that happen in this world. It is a decent plot, and I can understand why so many people love it. It's just maybe a 3-4 star series. Like, it was a good first book. The next book that I read was one that I said I wanted to read because I had picked it up before, read maybe 10% of, and then decided that it was just not the book for the time and put it to the side. Both of these happen to be romance books, but I picked up and finished Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. This book is a STEM romance, however it's not similar to her other ones because those are more rom-com-y and this one there's no com. We basically follow Rue, who is working with a friend of hers who has a company in the STEM world. She ends up meeting and slightly taking a liking to a man who is working against her friend to kind of take over her company. And so we have Rue kind of grappling with betrayal of a friend and, I guess, morals. However, I quite enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. Eli adores Rue and is obsessed with her, and I really, really like that quality about him. He tries to understand her and listens to her because Rue is she's quite reserved and doesn't really want to put her trust into anybody else at the moment. And I guess that feeling of, oh, maybe I can trust this man is very scary to her. So Eli is very understanding and fights for her, and I really like their relationship. It's definitely different to her other typical STEM romances, and I quite like that. Ali Hazelwood loves to throw some obscure, dramatic ending plot thing, and this one wasn't as out there as some of her other ones were, but I still didn't really care all too much about that side. I was just mainly there for the characters, so that's Not in Love. I think I gave this book 4 stars. The next book that I picked up was also one that I had started at some point and then put to the side, and that was The Boyfriend Candidate. Now, I unfortunately DNF this book. I think I got maybe 30% in and decided that it just wasn't for me. Usually I'm not really a fan of romances set in political environment. I just find it a bit boring, not really my cup of tea, don't typically enjoy that setting. The premise, however, was interesting. It is a fake dating romance between a librarian and, a hotshot candidate running for Texas governor. And again, it's just not my cup of tea, and I didn't care enough about the characters to enjoy the setting that we were in. But if that sounds intriguing to you, I would recommend it because Bestie Lena really loved this book. I do think it does explore some important themes in this book. I believe that Alexis, the main character, ends up using this whole fake dating with this candidate for governor as a way of bettering the library systems at schools and funding for libraries, which I think is a very important message. So if you want to read more about that, then I would recommend The Boyfriend Candidate. I just personally didn't care enough about the character. I feel like I've said that 5 million times now, but it's just how I felt. The next book that I picked up was 3 Dark Crowns. This one was available in my library as an audiobook, and I picked it up at some point at work. Luckily at work, there are many times that I can just put headphones on and listen to a book, so that's how I read a lot of audiobooks, but I just don't think it was the right book to pick up. The premise of this story, from what I understand, I also didn't really know much about the story going in, is that every generation of royalty in this kingdom has 3 sisters and 3 daughters, and only one of them can be queen. So I believe they fight to get to be the queen, and like that happens every generation, which is an interesting premise. I just didn't really care. Like we got to a scene where I was a bit confused, I'm not gonna lie, maybe because I just wasn't paying enough attention because I was at work, but I wasn't understanding each character. I also don't even remember if it was we only got the perspective of one of the queens or if it got the perspective of all of the queens. I just personally didn't feel like I understood what was going on, so I unfortunately DNF'd this one. Maybe if I had picked this up physically, because I do believe it's quite popular. Like, I think it's a bit of an older fantasy, but I think it's decently popular. Perhaps if I had read it physically, I would have understood it a bit better. Didn't really know what was going on, and if I don't really know what's going on and I'm more confused than I am intrigued, I'm not enjoying the book. Now, the next book that I picked up was the What We're Reading book club book of the month of September, which is The Poppy War. Now, going into this book, did not know very much about this, aside from the fact that everybody loved it and that it's fantasy. Upon reading, I gave this book 4.75 stars. The reason for it not being 5 stars, because I definitely think this book has 5-star potential, was because by the end of it, I felt like I was reading a completely different book. It also left me a little bit confused with a lot of talks of gods and how that linked to magic, our main character's decisions and things like that. It just felt very, very fast-paced by the end, because all around this book is incredibly fast-paced. My impression after reading like the first 10% was that this book is called The Poppy War. I was assuming we were going into the Poppy War at some point in this book, and that once I found out that in the military school that our main character managed to get into has 3 years, I figured it's a 3-book series. We're going to follow each year in one book, and I'm assuming that the Poppy War is going to happen at some point whilst our main character Rin is enrolled at this military school. That is not the case. The writing, incredible. I think that R.F. Kuang did a very good job of telling Rin's story, because R.F. Kuang took a lot of real life events and wrote her own versions for this book and wrote her own versions for certain characters in this book, and it is definitely a heavy book. There were so many times where I was reading and I just had to process for a second. I have seen reviews of people thinking, or not thinking, but saying that the events and the descriptions were there for shock value. I think is doing what R.F. Kuang intended to do a disservice. I think that especially because the events that happened in real life, R.F. Kuang wrote them in a way that is shocking, because it's shocking that anybody in our world has ever gone through that, but that isn't a bad thing. I don't know if I'm quite articulating how I want to say this properly, but let's just start from a general premise of the book. Rin, our main character, is an orphan who decides that instead of getting married off really young by someone that her family decided to marry her off to, she was going to attempt to get into military school and take a test, and she ends up getting in. She goes through quite the study process. It's a lot of physical harm to get her to stay up late at night studying, and then once she gets into the school, which is a military school, so preparing people to become soldiers or war figures and people that make all the decisions, she ends up having to face a lot of classism and makes a lot of enemies. Luckily makes some friends as well, but a lot of enemies. And Rin ends up learning the art of shamanism, I believe, which is where the whole aspect of gods and magic comes into play. It was confusing at points, and there were many points where I was confused and then just read a chapter more and I was like, oh, that makes sense. But by the end, it was all happening so quickly that I was just kind of in awe. And I was like, wow, Rin, she is just such a powerful person. You're just sat there reading, like, mind blown. Yeah, I'm going to throw my Goodreads review up on screen because I feel like this book was a lot fresher in my memory and I articulated my thoughts a little bit better. So I am going to throw that in there because thinking back to what I've said, I'm not sure if I've really made a good point of it. But I gave this book 4.75 stars and want to read the next book soon because I don't think this is a series that you can just not pick up the next one soon. But I would love to read it physically, and I currently don't own the second book. So we'll see when I get to pick up that book. The next book that I picked up had to be something light and fluffy and romancy. So I picked up Power Play by Chelsea Curto, which is book 2 in the DC Stars series. I really loved book 1. I love a good hockey romance. There is nothing that I love better than a fun team dynamic and a fun group of girls, and this book had that as well. After reading book 1, I was super excited for the 2 main characters of this book because we kind of got sneak peeks into it, and we follow Liam and Piper. Liam is like the quiet, reserved goalkeeper of the team, and Piper is a, not news anchor, but like a network presenter for the team that Liam plays on. And I really enjoyed this book. It did lean, sorry, this is my blanket because it's cold. The trope technically was Grumpy Sunshine. I find that trope slightly annoying when it's overdone, but I didn't really think it was that overdone. I enjoyed both the characters and who they are and who they were personality-wise. We explore quite a few themes in this book, namely Piper is exploring her sexuality and putting herself out there after a really emotionally draining divorce and relationship that she had, and Liam ends up being the one that helps her through that. We also follow Piper battling misogyny in her workplace, and I think that was also a really important message in the book. And yeah, I think I gave this book 4.75, I believe. I just think it dragged on a little bit too long. Romance books these days are just too long. Like, I don't need to be reading 600 pages. I still really enjoyed it. Okay, next I picked up book 2 in the Immortal Instruments, which is City of Ashes. In book 1, I don't know if I'm gonna say many spoilers, so I apologize, but I feel like most people have read these books. In book 1, Clary, our main character, and Jace, who she like has a crush on and stuff, end up liking each other. Some would say love, though that isn't used in that book just yet. And they turn out to be siblings, which I knew. I knew going in that this was unfortunately something that happens in this book. But what I didn't realize is how long this is drawn out for. Mind you, I am currently listening to book 3 now in October, and I'm about 75% through, and they're still siblings. I don't understand why. Like, could we not have, if for whatever reason Sandra Clare wanted to keep that in, fair enough, as like an end of book 1 plot twist, and then in book 2 we wrap it up quickly, because that is just weird, especially considering the amount of romantic tension that we have between the characters and the fact that they are both, and everybody is very well aware of this, and it's just uncomfortable all around. The fact that we are in book 3 and it's still happening, I'm like, I can't do this for much longer, so I need this to end. That is my main issue with the series. The plot is great, the plot is fun. Well, it's not fun because a bad guy is trying to take over the world, but it's fun. The character dynamics are good. I think every character is fleshed out enough to enjoy them. I think the magic is intriguing, and I really would have loved this as a kid. But this whole sibling thing is just dragging out so long, and I don't see why it's necessary. I truly don't. I truly don't. But again, I'm excited for her other books in the same world, and I need to figure out what the reading order is, because I think after book 3 you can kind of do the same as with Zodiac Academy, where you pick up a side series which helps you understand certain characters in the Mortal Instruments. That's City of Ashes. I honestly, like, that whole sibling thing is just the thing that stuck in my head, and I just can't get past it because it's just weird to me. And the main thing is that it's just taking so long to get over. The 9th and last book that I read this month was Ravenminder by Lindsay Cummings, which is an ARC coming out October 23rd. I really enjoyed this book. It felt very reminiscent of Red Queen and the Air Awakens series, which I read when I was a kid, because it has like the whole brother love triangle thing, and set in a kingdom, which both of those other books have, and I just really enjoyed that. There's forbidden romance, there's animal bondings with birds, which was also, it gave such great imagery throughout the entire book, which is, I think, one of my favorite things about it, because I could picture the world so well. Sometimes, not that I struggle to imagine it, I just think that when you get a unique piece of world building and you are able to describe it in a way that I can picture it, I'm really appreciative of that. So in this world, birds are used as war animals, and we basically have giant eagles that are used as horses, I guess. And in the kingdom, in like the aviary and where they're trained, you get so much cool imagery of people being able to train with these birds, and our main character ends up becoming a minder, which is kind of what they use as like animal tamer, I guess, of a certain creature in this world, who is half raven, half cat, And the imagery and like the playfulness that we have between our main character and this creature is so well done. There is gods and magic, and the plot is basically to save the kingdom from bad shadow people. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book. So those are the 9 books that I read in September. I kind of hope to read a few more, but it is what it is. Maybe this month we can read 10 perhaps. So yeah, now we need to work on our book journal because I have been putting that off for a while and I need to do it. So let's do that. Okay, welcome to my desk. I have my iPad open with Pinterest on. I have my iPad on with Pinterest open, and we have to sort these. So these are my October TBR and my September reads, and this is my reading journal. So let's see where I left this off. Oh yeah, so this is my September spread for my TBR. Really boring here, I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't feeling very creative when I made this one, but I forgot to print out people watching for this one, so I need to add that. And then we need to make an October spread, which I probably should have included in my October video, but I'm just gonna include it here anyway. So let's add the people watching that I need to add to my September TBR, mark off the ones that I actually did read, and then start October. Okay, people watching is now in, and I'm going to use pink to mark which ones I did read. I'm not sure what I want to do. Something spooky, obviously. I'm thinking either something like this or like this, but yeah, we'll see. Hi, so it is now the next day, and I did in fact get tired and continue the next day. So I'm finished now, but we have this page. So we've got the books that I actually read, and then their star ratings down here, and then my little October page, which I'm really happy with. If you look too closely, you can see all of the little, like, it's not perfect, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. Again, I just saw something on Pinterest because I'm not typically creative enough to think of things myself. I do try to like adapt it to be more unique, but... And then here we have the October TBR. I probably should have made both pages because there's way too many books and they didn't fit nicely like in rows on this page, and I already put this down and wrote this. So I was like, I'm just gonna have to do with it. So I grouped them by like vibe, and then this page will be for my reading wrap up. So that's just kind of it for that.